My name is Prosper Byamungu. I run a design build company called Brownstridge, and basically we build bespoke spaces, interesting ideas that are not exactly on the market. They are not exactly new, but they are very innovative for different companies, different people, and different entities. Turning that into a business was obviously the next step for me because, people have to live. I need to pay my bills, but I also needed to add something interesting to what I believe is a country that has so much potential, but very little opportunity in terms of exploration. Recycling has been an idea for a very long time, everywhere. There's nothing new about it. But what are you recycling in this case? Some people say they are recycling plastic, some recycle wood, some recycle metal. We decided to use bigger units out of all of this to do our recycling work. And in this case, the biggest unit that we could think of was a container. It's a box. It's already 4 walls and a floor and roof. So why not turn it into something interesting? Why not turn it into space? One of the biggest problems in this country is actually high cost of construction. High cost of living is part of the problem, obviously. And at the same time, there's a lot of rural-urban migration. There's a lot of there's a housing problem. That's the gist of what I'm trying to say. Because of that, we're trying to see how people can work around getting more housing into the market, getting more ideas in how they can work in compact spaces, because land is getting smaller and smaller as well. We are fragmenting it. There used to be a time when you're buying land, you're buying an acre or something like that. Now, you buy a 50 by 100 because that is a new economic model. People just buy large tracts of land and then split them into smaller plots and then add and turn them into estates. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that if you look around most cities in the world, most people go up. Ugandans in general like going sideways. We like building our own homes, our big houses. We don't like apartments. We are not an apartment city. We are not an apartment country. We don't like going up. We like our environment and that's a good thing. We're already set up that way. Why not utilize it? So we believed that you can turn this into anything from homes, and because of the nature of building, again, you have to understand that a lot of Ugandans build piecemeal. You don't have 100, 200 million in one go to put up a house. So what most people do is you build a foundation, you build a few rooms, you finish them, and then you just keep adding onto your house, and at the end of the day, you find a massive house 10 years later, and it looks like someone spent a lot of money. Yes, they did, but over a long period of time. What containers and units like this can do for people is that they can allow you to build like Legos, one bit at a time. You just keep adding them together and you'll have a structure you're looking for. At the same time, you're saving the environment that you're destroying every other day with all the other things. I'm not going to say fossil fuels, because we need them. We need the fuel, we need we are not yet there. We are not yet in that space of just electric everything, and we can't pretend about that. People-centered design was literally my main inspiration. Human beings. Everything you're doing is for the next human being. Either that or you're doing it for animals anyway. But the idea is that you have to understand that you're not designing for yourself only. Inspiration comes from very many different directions. A lot of it is from nature as well. When you look around you, everything around you is already working. If you see a group of ants moving things around, they're working. They're working very hard. They're not looking for money, but they have to take care of their livelihoods in one way or another. Or they're taking care of, a queen or whatever. It doesn't matter, but they create communities. So when you start looking at all these little things around you, you start seeing, trees. They grow in clusters as forests. It's not by mistake. It's very, very much for survival. It's very much for for growth as a whole. So I do believe that things like that, one of my biggest inspirations, I spend a lot of time on the road. I move quite a bit around the country, and you can't help but be inspired. You can't look around you and think, I shouldn't add something to this. Something good to some of this that is already here naturally. We're working on a series of projects that are very much human-centered and also symbiotic with nature. A lot of our work is done in the natural environment. So you're looking at safari lodges, you're looking at outdoor spaces, you're looking at very much of working around lakes and rivers, working in national parks, where basically the rules are very, very, very strict in terms of what you can actually bring in and what you cannot add to the ecosystem that you find there. So one of the projects that we're working on is the Safari Lodge with using containers with Amos Wekesa. That literally was born out of, interestingly, not even a national park idea. It was more from motive where we did an urban design it's an urban regeneration design where you find a number of warehouses that have been defunct for a while. Warehouses are basically meant for storage, but it's in the middle of town, and then you find a number of them are empty because industrial areas are moving further and further out of town. You don't particularly need to use the ones that are in the center of town for storage anymore. So because of that, you find that maybe because the value is also going up, you need to work around those. You need to make sure that you turn them into something more interesting. So a number of projects that are like that, let's say what we've done with Motive, is not destroy what we found there and rebuild something new, but merge it with an idea of what it already is in order for us to harness, like its maximum power. We're just trying to work with space that's already existing rather than trying to demolish and start over. If we were to talk cost, Ugandans are very obsessed with the word cheap. I don't understand what they assume cheap is, but it's a very relative term, basing on what you actually look at. There is cheap in the short term, and then there is cheap in the very long term. Then there is cheap in terms of ideas, but then when it comes to proper implementation, you'll find that there's nothing cheap about it at all. So in this case, we are looking at long-term effects of what we're doing. It's more expensive for you to build a house in brick and mortar, and then 10 years down the road, the value of the land has increased, and then you have to come and demolish and build something even bigger or better. It's cheaper for me to build at the same cost with, let's say, movable units, containers. And at the end of the day, I can definitely resell that to a different person and keep my land. That's a very different idea. If you're selling the land on which there is a project, already you're losing. The person is going to come and they will have to spend on demolishing, they have to spend on removing all the debris, and then even littering, because they have to figure out where they're going to pour all of that debris. But if I build with a container, I can literally sell my entire house as is. You lift it, take it somewhere else, and I stay with my land. And I do something new in the same space. So when you look at the logic of why we are doing what we're doing, it's that. It's the fact that you need to be able to understand that if you don't plan for the future, there is always a change. Building something like this, obviously, is not a one-man thing. It's not about me. This is about a group of people. And the groups of people that we're looking at in this case are very much what we would call handymen, or, builders, carpenters, welders, electricians. The groups that we always marginalize for some reason in this country, and we never look around us and think that they are actually a very, very big, important group of people in the role they play in actually building the nation. Their value is not in piping and making sure that water gets there. their value is actually what it looks like at the end. Over a period of time, I've learned that most people define what they believe they want to do or be by words and titles. Someone will say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a pilot, an architect, fashion designer. But those words are very limiting. You need to understand that the best of the best out there are not just doing what that word says. If you look at the world of architecture, the biggest architects in the world were not about just the design of the building. They were about the design of businesses and homes. You need to understand it deeper. You have to understand that if you're doing design is it's a means to an end for someone else. For example, if you're designing an architect's office, it has to be inspiring. If you're designing, let's say, like a lawyer's office, okay, let's say that. It has to be inspiring to his client. Someone has to walk in and feel safe. They have to feel like, yeah, if I have problems, they're going to go away because I trust this person. But that is an art. It's an art of understanding the psychology of how people feel, how they work, and it's part of the research you do. It's not just about put something nice out there. So I believe that the only advice I can ever give anyone who wants to do anything in terms of taking on a profession of some sort, understand the deeper meaning of that profession.